Good evening, this is the Oscar expert here with Brother Bro, and it's time to review Eileen. This is an adaptation of the book Eileen, directed by William Oldroyd, and stars Thomasin McKenzie and Anne Hathaway. Thomasin McKenzie plays a girl in the 60s who has a boring life and works in a prison and has an alcoholic father. And then Anne Hathaway comes along to work in the prison, and she is just hypnotized by everything that Anne Hathaway represents. Kind of like a Carol-ish relationship, like Rooney Mara, Cate Blanchett. At least at first it is like that. People have very wide, diverse reactions to this film. I think for good reason. Even you and I think it's the film where we were the most split. And it really depends who you talk to at this year's Sundance, whether or not you're going to get a recommendation. I've talked to a lot of people who feel the same way as me. I did not like this. It did not work for me. And then there's other people who had a great time and they think it's, a little brilliant. I have trouble understanding that. I was really into the movie. I was hooked on a dramatic level, just wanting to see what would come out of this relationship that Thomasin McKenzie is forming with Anne Hathaway. I just wanted to see that build. And that's where the movie's going most of the time, and then it goes in a little bit of a different direction. Okay, so up until let's just call it the twist. Even though I don't even know if it's a twist or not.
Let's just call it a twist.
We can call it a twist.
It's at the very least, it's like a sort of genre twist. Up until then, I agree that the interesting part of the story was Thomasin McKenzie and Anne Hathaway. I think both of them are really good in this movie, and Anne Hathaway definitely impressed me. I think she was doing great work here. But it felt like that relationship was kind of being built, but it kind of wasn't. It wasn't obvious where it was going. A lot of this, she's kind of waiting for her to call her back, and then she doesn't call her back, and then she's like, oh, well, I guess I'm just gonna go continue my boring life again. At least the first half of this film felt just too slow. There wasn't enough going on. I wasn't sure why we were watching the story. Even in retrospect, I'm like, I guess it was to build the character as being sort of ordinary and boring and give her reason to want to break free. But even that is not so interesting. I fail to see what's really interesting here. So my thoughts are that if Thomasin McKenzie's character existed now, she'd be on the computer having all kinds of fun on the internet and playing games and going on Discord and shit. I kind of related, and I was like, yeah, in that time, if you lived in this situation, you really would just be should I be content with my boring life or not? And the movie gives her enough glimpses where you're you have an imagination, you have something waiting to get out of you, and this person walks into your life who has this aura that you feel like you can never attain. And also the past and the history of this character and her family, and the way that ties into that, I thought that was interesting. It was obvious that this was based on a book because it's one of those characters that is sort of introverted, and we're supposed to believe there's something fire burning inside of her, but it's we don't really see what it is. Well, I don't agree that we don't see it, because I feel if you are gonna cast a character who is very internal and introverted, Thomasin McKenzie is your go-to. I feel sure, but it just suggests that something's here, and it's this sort of ambiguous thing, because in the book you would really explore what that feels like.
Why would she know what it is?
What, so you're exploring a movie that's about
she has
literally
something that she doesn't know what it is. I mean, what it is whatever she perceives Anne Hathaway as having, in a way, right?
Yeah, I guess so. But it's still such an amorphous thing.
Okay,
I need a little more concrete here. I think I fall somewhere in the middle on do I need concrete in my films, or am I okay with a high level of abstraction? I'm probably somewhere in the middle. I like a little bit of both. But this film tested my tolerance for that level of abstraction, I guess, as to who is this character on the inside, and what's she looking for, and especially by the end I was I don't even know what you were going for. I just don't know what this was even supposed to do. And here's a big problem I have with this movie is Anne Hathaway has this sort of stated motivation that has to do with her vocation as a psychologist. And when the twist happens, you start to see this come alive in a really interesting way. Fucking great scene around that point in the movie. Even if you're bored, I would say just stick with it until this part if you're committed to this movie, because it gets really interesting and exciting for a little while. And it felt like this was exploring the psychologist in an interesting way. But then we see that it doesn't really matter. The stated motivation that she has doesn't really factor in with the character. I think it's really exciting when the movie completely takes a left turn, because you're you're being a period Carol romance bubbling up type of thing, and then it's oops, no, I'm not anymore. And then it gets interesting, and our lead character actually makes some of the most hardcore decisions that she's ever made in her entire life. Although I do kind of agree,
a little bit lost sight of what was going on with Anne Hathaway, and the ending of the movie, which I'm not going to spoil or anything, I didn't feel like it was clear what it was trying to say about this character.
Yeah, I don't know what she got out of it.
What I thought initially about it was kind of wrong, because I read, I think, what the book was supposed to be, and I was like, okay, I guess if that's what it's supposed to be, I understand why, but I also didn't feel that. Whatever way I could possibly read the ending, like, it just didn't do that much for me. I almost wanted it to keep building on that twist that it made, and it kind of just does that and then pretends like now we have a way out of the story. I don't know.
And there's an incredible monologue at that point from Marin Ireland. Really strong acting work there. But I agree that, like, the ending, it does nothing for me. Like, nothing about this movie does anything for me. It's too easy for me to see a lot of, like, the story as being basic, and then it's hard for me to see why it's special or how the character ends up from point A to point B, why it takes this turn. Like, none of it adds up to me. But I will also say that when the credits came up, the audience was shocked that it was over, and they were confused. People didn't know whether to clap or not. It feels like a director who just wants to do a genre exercise and adapt a book that he likes. And I can't really see a great reason to make the film other than that. And it felt like it took too long to get to the interesting part.
There are some good crafts in this movie, particularly the score. The cinematography, which is done by Ari Wegner. I saw that in the credits and I was like, wow, surprised, did not know that was her. The film has some beautiful close-ups and really strong use of, like, deep orange, red colors.
It was maybe a little too intense with, like, the deep orange colors throughout.
I like that a lot, actually. There are a lot of things that I just don't know what to do with them, but I definitely, like, liked the movie. And again, Thomasin McKenzie, I feel, was really, really strong. For most people, they're gonna say, like, it's Anne Hathaway, but to me, that she was a standout. Her accent aside, like, okay, let's just admit it. The accent work, the Boston accent, not good. Doesn't make sense. I would give the movie a 7 out of 10.
I would give this movie that made no impact on me a 4 out of 10.
Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing.
Do you have a crush on a blonde lady who smokes cigarettes and doesn't care what society thinks of her?